I was about 9 years old when I first got the message that being gay was wrong. I was watching a comedy show on the BBC, and the culmination of the sketch was having a man who, it had become apparent, was attracted to men sexually, ostracized, the other people distancing themselves from him. And even though I was only 9 years old, there was something as I watched it that I felt, oh, somehow feel this relates to me. And I got the message, hide yourself. If people see who you are, they're going to reject you. Later on, I learned that this has a term, minority stress, the experience of living in a majority culture where the majority culture does not value the minority. The term was actually made popular in a 1995 paper, a study on minority stress and mental health in gay men. And in this paper, Mayer, who was the man doing the study, he focused in on how minority stress is based on the premise that gay people in a heterosexist society are subject to chronic stress related to their stigmatization. So this experience of minority stress can either be internal, in that we take on internalized homophobia. We've taken on the negative attitudes from our society towards ourselves and the stigma. Or it can be external, based on a fear of rejection or discrimination. Thirdly, it may actually be the experience of discrimination or even violence. So this study looked at 741 gay men in New York City, looking at mental health. And bear in mind, it was only in 1973 that being gay was removed as a mental health disorder. And so it was still a very touchy subject. Can you say that gay men are more prone to mental health? Because there'd been this whole pushback against the idea that being gay was a mental health disease. But what this study found was that amongst the men that they studied, the ratio suggested that men who had high levels of minority stress were twice to 3 times as likely to suffer from high levels of distress. And this is the thing with minority stress. When we grow up being told by the culture around us there is something about you that is wrong, that we don't accept, that we do not value, those who are in the minority, whether it's due to your race, your color, your religion, whether it's because you are an indigenous person in a culture that no longer respects your culture. All of these experiences of minority stress lead to heightened instances of mental health disorders. Part of the reason being that it's been found that to grow up with minority stress is almost equivalent to growing up in a war zone, in that people exhibit complex PTSD. Some exhibit this. Some people go through traumatic experiences and they have the ability to self-regulate and to release the impact of these experiences. But those of us who haven't learned how to self-regulate, or who have taken in a negative self-view, then these minority stress experiences impact and leave a mark of trauma. And that can become complex PTSD, where there's a lack of a feeling of safety. We fear the world. We doubt ourselves. We find it difficult to make relationships with others. We find it difficult to trust. Now, you might wonder, is a 1995 paper still relevant now? Well, a study in 2021 by the Be Well survey questioned 40,000 13 and 14-year-olds on their psychological well-being, asking them questions around feeling good, functioning well, their life satisfaction, looking at their overall quality of life and stress, how overwhelmed they might feel, and negative affect, so whether they're experiencing negative emotions such as worry. Now, this study was across a broad range of people, of teenagers, some of whom were LGBTQ, others who were heterosexual. And what they found was that there was a notable difference in the levels of unhappiness, worry, of feeling scared or angry in the LGBTQ cohort. And that actually 35% of this group had experienced discrimination. So this study was in 2021, so it means that even now there are still people experiencing this sense of minority stress. And for any of us who have grown up in the period between 95 and 21, it means that that has been there, part of our life. The workshop that I'm running is an opportunity to explore how to both go into the memories of being other, but in a way where we share them in a space of community. So instead of those memories being a place of isolation, as we share our memories, share our experiences, we recognize our connection. We hear others telling a story that could be our own story. We recognize that we were not alone. And so the first part of the workshop is about storytelling, telling our stories, sharing our stories, going into pairs, having a chance to share after I start by sharing some of my own stories to give an example. And then in your pairs, you can share some stories, recollections. Where did you experience minority stress? When did you feel alone, other? Maybe like me, you have a time when you remember that first moment where you suddenly felt, oh, there's something about me that's different, that's wrong. Then in the middle part of the workshop, we look at finding these unconscious negatives, the internalized homophobia. We have an exercise which allows us to bring these things into conscious awareness. What is it that I hold in myself? What messages have I taken in? And together we share those and we recognize that this is some of the trauma that we carry. We have these negative beliefs about ourselves and who we are. And then as a group, we go through striking each word off and bringing in an affirming word, something that celebrates our queerness rather than criticizes it. And this is really powerful because there have been times where I've been looking at a word and I thought, I don't know how we're going to convert that. And the power of the collective is that within that collective group, there'll be a few people who can look at it in a different way and then see where the strength is. So an example might be having a message about, being gay, bi, trans is to be different. And then you might transform that into, well, it's to be unique. It's to be uniquely yourself. Then in the last part of the workshop, I lead a guided visualization where we meet our inner child or teenager, going back to whatever age you need to go to, where you resonate that there's a time where the child, teenager started to feel different, other, not wanted, rejected. We go to them with this message of hope and this message of affirmations. Reading back through these words as I lead the meditation, you hear the words that you've generated as a group and you bring that to your younger self. You also see, what can I learn from my younger self? Maybe there's an element of hope and vitality that my younger self has that they can offer back to me. reconnect with. And so by the end of the workshop, we've had an opportunity to both recognize our sense of connection, our shared experience. We've explored the unconscious negatives, the internalized homophobia, which is part of this aspect of minority stress, which can then lead to mental health challenges where we feel an increased sense of anxiety, stress, difficulty in trusting ourselves, a low self-worth, the need to self-medicate or use alcohol or other substances in order to try and escape these uncomfortable feelings, difficulty building connections. And we bring all of the unconscious negatives to the surface, and then we transform them, and together we celebrate as we visualize our younger selves, bringing this message of love and care and hope, the words that we needed to hear at that time. We bring them to ourselves. And in that way, we can bring some healing. So I really look forward to seeing any of you on the workshop that are able to make it.